Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Duels of the Spellslingers. So it's me, Obus Form here today. I'm one of the Discord admins and mods. And as you guys know, the big nerf bat is about to hit Ral smack in his very smug jaw, square face, 9 o'clock shadow. And I wanted to bring you guys today updates about the patch 1.01 nerf bat to Ral, a little nerf to Liliana, some of the new cards, and then also a sneak peek to 5 new cards that are not actually in the website yet, but we are privy to them on this channel. So I do want to show you guys, and then also some of the very beautiful actually artwork that this game actually has to offer that often gets obscured. Anyway, so let's dive straight into it. So we got our patch notes. We have Drizzt. We'll cover that in a second, but the big thing we want to go through is Ral. So Chaos Lightning, it was 3 mana and now it costs 5 mana. So what does this truly mean at the most, overpowered levels? Before it was like, 6 mana or maybe even 5 mana. He could cast his entire double chain lightning because it was going to be, the first time would be 1 Spark of Genius and then a 1 mana cost, and then Chaos Lightning would cost 1 mana, so that's 2 mana for 3 spells. The next one would be, excuse me, the exact same chain of, Spark of Genius costs 0, and then, Shock costing 1 mana, and then another Chaos Lightning costing another mana. So that'd be 4 mana to cast 6 spells. Would be about 20 damage, plus his passive, plus they get to Ember Mage, and it was too much. But now with the nerf, it's going to cost at least 3 mana. So what does that mean? 3 times 2 is 6, plus maybe at least, 1 cost, so 7, 8. So it's going to be at least 8 mana to cast double Chaos Lightning in 1 turn. It's a big nerf to his tempo. He can't kill you anymore at 6 mana or even 5 mana if he has all the cards. It's got to be at least 8 mana plus, the ping damage and his Aether Figment. And we got nerfed too. Let's take a look at the other one. So Breaching Serpent used to cost 11 mana. Now it costs 13 mana, and it's down to a 6/6. Why is 6/6 so important? 7/7 is a very unique tier. 6/6 is exactly, so let's go take a look. 6/6 has exactly this particular card that I'm thinking. It's the black creature, 3 mana zombie that is recycled grotesque. That's the power of where 6/6 lays, and now it can be, killing and blocking, nicely blocking into a Breaching Serpent, so that's for black. I don't think blue really has any other, 6 damage things, but it does have Toothy the Dream. So doing 6, and again, also, the Rune Shell King. So 6, and also Shimmering Komodo, 6 damage is a nice area that it can get killed and not have to have this, Mega Piranha, some random stuff happening where it's 7 HP. You have a lot of these sort of 6 power creatures that are not 7 power and can now deal with it. So just going through some of the other ones. Yeah, we've got Seismodon. I know no one uses this guy, but for example, Seismodon, Fire Spell Elemental. So it really brings down the power of all these other creatures that can do 6 damage. So I'm not going to get into all of them. That's an example. Next nerf is Aether Figment. It costs 0 still if you drafted this turn, but it's now a 3/2 instead of a 3/3. Why is that so important? Because at 0 mana, bringing out a 3/3 is impossible to kill. If we take a look at basically 1 mana, so not 0 mana, but at 1 mana, if we take a look at all the cards, so let's just reset 1 mana creatures, a lot of them can do 2 damage. So I know Elite Vanguard can do 3, but Elite Vanguard is only played in Nahiri and Big Gideon. All the other 1 costs that are normally played can do at least 2 damage. Rune Shell Crab, Cranial Consultant, Decaying Ghoul, right? If it gets Relentless, Raging Goblin, 2-Headed Hellhound, Pouncing Lemur. All these 1 mana guys, the majority of them can at least do 2 damage. The signature cards, maybe not Shipwrecker. And so that allows Aether Figment to be countered by anything that costs 1. The majority of them at least, right? Pick a good one. And then let's look at 2 mana. Basically every card at 2 mana does at least 2 damage, if not 3. I mean, the majority of the cards that you would take, they would all do 2 damage at least, if not maybe 3 damage. So they can all, again, handle the Aether Figment if Ral or Jace or Teferi or whoever playing blue, or even Ashiok, gets a lucky one in turn 1. and it's not that overpowering. So that's the Ral nerfs. I think overall this really brings down Ral's tempo by a lot. Aether Figment is dealable. Chaos Lightning is now, you know, at least minimum like a turn 4, not like turn 3 and just, you know, explode. Breaching Serpent again is 1 less and is now, you know, blockable and killable within the range. If you decide to attack, he won't survive at 1 HP, which is so annoying. And he's 2 spells more. And then also Aether Figment. So I think this really sort of hard nerfs Ral with a really big bat. So let's get into Liliana. Liliana's Dark Gladiator. So it's not just Liliana, but she's the only one who plays zombies, right? No one else plays zombies. In the beta, it was always -1/-1, but now it was -2/-2 back to -1/-1. In the beta, it was also 5/5. Now they want to make it a 6/5. If I'm being honest, I really do feel that -2/-2 was a lot of value. If you successfully triggered Liliana's, you know, signature creature, well, let's go to Liliana's deck actually. If you triggered Liliana's Die Hard Fan, which, as you guys know, reduces the cost of all zombies by 1, it becomes a 4 cost and debuts -2/-2 for a 5/5. That's very powerful. I'm not sure if it's overpowered per se, but it's indeed very momentum driving. But if you're going to bring him down to -1/-1, I think it should be a 6/6. Because almost nobody's going to play him at a -1/-1. It's worse than a shock. Maybe what you could have done is you could give an enemy creature -2, -0, or -0, -2, and you could pick that choice, but still retain him as a 5/5 creature for 5 mana. I think maybe that would have been a better answer. But who knows? Devs always have their numbers, and I'm not privy to that. The other Liliana nerf, as you guys know, is Liliana's Goliath was always, even in beta, a 4/3. Now it is a 4/2, and they cite that Liliana's share of the metagame in the lower leagues, which I do agree in the lower levels, no one knows how to handle it. But if I'm being honest, nobody knows how to handle it because they don't have the experience to handle it, or they don't have the cards, or just the, excuse me, the abilities and knowledge to do it. I don't think it's truly worth a nerf because now at 4/2, you could shock it and then turn it into a 4/3, or sorry, turn it into a 10/3. Before it would die and turn into a 10/4, and 4 mana is a lot harder, 4 HP is like a Zozu. It's much harder to deal with, and you start needing like 3 cost creatures, you know, that can do it like 4. It's hard to deal with, right? So it becomes a very effective sort of creature where not a lot of creatures at, let's find it again, not a lot of creatures at 3 cast, I know can, you know, do 4 damage. A lot of them are capped at this sort of 3 damage example. But they have abilities and stuff, right? But a lot of them only do 3 damage, and I think that's what they were going for. But now that it's gone down to 3 HP, even after Relentless, I think across the board, any sort of 3-drop can block it if they really wanted to. At least the majority of the good ones, and of course a lot of signature cards. So I think that nerf to Liliana, I'm not sure if it's really worth, you know, I'm not sure if it's really needed, but I mean, it is what it is. We can always play around it. And if I'm being honest, in my experience, I don't think it was the 3 HP that made it easy to deal with. I think it's just people were forced to block it anyways because it was 10 damage, right? Or you would give it sneak. So I think that's where the value came in. But again, it is a nerf, and we'll have to see how that works in the numbers. And with that, we're going to get into now the reveal of the Drizzt. So as you guys know, Drizzt Duerden, he is now released, or will be in patch 1.01. And if you read it, it says, after you attack. What does that mean? After you attack is just like this particular card. The white card that we all know costs 5 mana, that it's a creature. Team Captain. So on attack, give all other friendly creatures +1/+1. Except now Drizzt is, after you attack with 1 or more legendary creatures, you automatically summon an attacking Gwenwavar. Gwenwavar always gets +1 damage permanently every time it attacks or dies. So what it means is that it attacks like Gideon. You always have to attack every turn. You want to be as aggressive as you can, starting from level 1, starting from 1 mana, and just keep blindly attacking to grow this guy because he does trample, and every time he does attack, he gets +1. And so you have 6 legendaries, so you have 6 chances or 6 creatures to proc him. But then you have another 2, so that's 8 from Drizzt's Herald. A friendly creature on debut becomes a legendary, so he can legendary himself, right? Then he can attack. And then also Hero's Call, draft a legendary creature and reduce its cost by 2. So in total, you have 6 plus 2 plus 2. You have 10 creatures, 10 chances, kind of, right? If every creature sort of dies or only gets 1 attack in. 10 creatures and 10 chances to sort of attack and grow your guy. And the way he does, he wants to start growing from turn 1. So you don't want to play him control, even though he has the white splash. you want to play him with all the legendary creatures as aggro as possible. So let's take a look. Legendary creatures that you might want. So you could do Pierre the Dreamer, and he may or may not be good, right? So some people don't want to block him because he's, 0/2, but some people do, so you can get value from starting from turn 1 or turn 2. Zone Split the Clever, alright, maybe, but really maybe these guys, like Ragnar Redeemer, flying, Blood Queen Drawn, again flying, hard to deal with. Tuthi the Dreamer, Okun the Crusher, as you guys know, is a very tempo gaining card. He represents a lot of damage. The moment you drop him down, he needs to be Flame Coiled, he needs to be repulsed, unsummoned, he needs to be grudge matched, because if you don't block him and they remove your creature that blocks, again, many creatures that we just went through earlier don't do 4 damage. So having 4 HP, like Zozu, is hard to deal with. So again, if you drop Okun, very powerful. But of course, just like you want Red Splash for Gideon to trigger Gideon's passive, to trigger Drizzt's passive, you want to get Red Splash, so you can do 6 of any color, but you want Zozu, Haste, Tagic, Haste, maybe even Virtus because Sneak, and then next turn guaranteed damage with the Sneak, maybe even a Mastermind, next turn again guaranteed Sneak. But also you want Daneth the Capuchin. Why? Because if you look at his other things, debut, it targets a friendly creature to become legendary. So Daneth the Capuchin will give that target +1/+1. Defend with Twinkle, it says it gives a friendly creature +0, +2, and ward, and then adds this strike with icing to your hand. So what's this Defend with Twinkle? It's the same +2, +0, +2, and ward. It's the same as this card, as you guys might know. Blue, spell, 2 mana, bubble. It's the exact same thing. It gives ward. And the most important thing here is ward. Why? Because when you finally do play your legendary creature that doesn't have haste, so let's say you're not playing Zozu, you're not playing Tagic, but you're playing Mastermind with the Sneak, you're playing Virtus the Veiled with the Sneak, you want to drop a ward so that no one can kill him, no one can Flagrant Foul, no one can Grudge Match, Unsummon, whatever. You can guarantee an attack next turn, and therefore guarantee that Gwenhwyvar, and pardon me if I say it incorrectly, please do let me know, you can guarantee that Gwenhwyvar will come out next turn and attack because, well, you get guaranteed to attack with by protecting your legendary guys, right? And you can have some interesting legendaries. You got Ward, you got Haste, you got even Arrest or Lavinia with the Sneak. So again, you can even do Sylvia Brightspear. Sets each health of enemy creatures to 1, which is a perfect combination of this sort of trample and +1 permanent damage. Then you also have Strike with Icing, Death, and Stun an enemy creature that gives a friendly creature +2/+0. You can give that friendly creature +2 maybe to your Gwenhwyvar. I don't know if this is going to be a permanent. It doesn't say that. I think this +1/+0 permanence is exactly the same as Liliana's passive, where only creatures that experience that passive get the permanent buff. I don't think it's permanent if these cards or any other buffs are used on it. So that's what I think of Drizzt. Functions a little bit like, sort of Vivian with the 6 of any legendary, but you really want to go for haste, kind of like Vivian. But then he functions like Gideon, where you just want to, have your legendary, or in Gideon's case, 3 creatures, to just attack every turn so that you can smash Gideon's face into other people's faces. A very painful way actually to take damage. If you ever tried face smacking someone, please don't. It is very painful and will cause you to go, or that person to go, to the hospital. But in any case, this case, you want to cast legendaries and smash face so that your Gwenhwyvar can maul face and gain more. So that's how Drizzt is played. I think much like Vivian, much like Gideon, just aggressive and very trampoline damage every turn attacking. So with that, we're going to now go into the reveal of 5 new cards not yet shown, and I hope you guys enjoy this. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so the first card that we're going to reveal today is 2 mana, 1/1 white card called Blink Dog Pack. So it is 2 mana, it is a 1/1 debut. Summon a copy of this creature. You know what that reminds me of? First of all, it reminds me of Vivian, but it reminds me of that blue card spawning Awakana, that fish. That is basically a debut creature. This one, where it spawns a copy that's 0/3, and with Vivian's, sort of passive ability, can turn into like something ridiculous, like a 5, maybe not a 5, okay, but like a 3/4 or something like that at turn 1, which is very powerful stuff. So 2 mana, 1/1, it can also summon a copy, so it kind of reminds me just of that. But where else can you use a white card, 2 mana, 1/1? You can use it in Gideon decks, right? Because Gideon wants more creatures on board, so it'll function well with him. You can do it even in Liliana, although Liliana White Splash, I don't think you would splash this particular card because, you know, there's no synergy, there's no Relentless, it's not a zombie, so probably not. Jace White Splash, probably not Nissa. So it does work in a Johnny, but because Johnny is triggered on, his passive is triggered on, you know, targeting friendly creatures, I don't think it's going to work here either. Although if you did grow this 1/1 to, let's say, a 5/5, it is a copy of itself, so it becomes a 5/5 and it's 2 copies. That can be interesting. But I think the biggest use of this will be in Gideon and of course in Vivian, where Vivian does want haste or the spawning, spawning a Rowana, stuff like that. And I think it also has some value in Kaya because Kaya wants more creatures so that you can't block, so that you can either do sneak or flying, or in this case, just numerous creatures and to do more damage. So that's also possible, but we'll have to see if Kaya truly uses it because this card doesn't fly or have sneak. It also is usable in Nahiri decks, although Nahiri usually wants big damage, right? More than just a 1/1. It wants like Pouncing Lemur, it wants like Raging Goblin with the haste, or it wants something ridiculous like the 3/1 damage. I don't know if 1/1, you know, as 2 copies is enough, but we'll have to see. And for Teferi, it is useful, I mean, as a 2 cost, but I don't think 2 cost, that's the best. You can have Leonin Healer for healing, Isochron Scepter, his staff, so I think maybe 2 cost is not for Teferi. So I think in general, this card is for Kaya, Nahiri, and maybe the aggressive people, and maybe even Vivian, if you'd like to. So the next card we have is called Pixie Trickster. Pixie Trickster is a blue card, 4 mana, 1/2, and it's flying, and that's great and all, but the real big thing is that it turns into enemies or target card, transform any creature, so it could be yours as well, into a 3/3. And what does that remind you guys of? Well, let's go take a look. It reminds me of blue spell, 4 mana, and it's called Shell Game. Turns enemy creatures into a 0/6. Who do you use this on, might you ask? I'm so glad you guys asked. You didn't have to, but since you did. You would use this on Liliana's Goliath. It did get nerfed, Liliana's Goliath, but you would use this on any creature that you don't want to just destroy or come back. So you could use it on big guys like Spawning Hellions, but if the #1 use of the Shell Game is against Liliana's Goliath, or really any Relentless creature, or any creature. So this creature, in this case, Pixie Trickster, is a rare card. And it's a 1/2, and it turns the enemy into a 3/3 frog, giant frog, which I don't think has any spells. It's just a 3/3. So I think it works perfectly in, like, you know, Jace, control Jace. I mean, how else are you going to play Jace, right? It's always control. But basically, control Jace, where you want to get rid of a creature like a Get-To Ember Mage or a Breaching Sea Serpent, instead of turning into a 7/7 or 6/6 now. It's a 3/3 with the frog. Get-To Ember Mage becomes a frog. So it's a nice way to bring more control and still have, most importantly, a body on the field. But now that body does 3/3, so it's like an Aether Figment, right? Kind of have to weigh your options there. So I think that's maybe what's going to be used. Control Jace, control Kiora maybe at 4 mana. You can debut this thing twice, so you can turn 2 enemy creatures into 3/3s and live through it. That'll be a very big tempo swing. Of course, control Teferi and maybe Ashiok if he decides to go control instead of Nightmares. So that's where it can be going. The next card we have is another rare card. It's called Sadistic Mind Flare. 4 mana, 2/3. Very cool stuff. Give another friendly creature +4/+4 and destroy it, and it's a black card. You know what I'm thinking, right? Vraska. It automatically destroys something for you. And where would you play if you're Vraska? So let's take a look. Black cards, things, creatures. Because Vraska wants to destroy on her turn, you could do it on something that wouldn't normally be blocked and wouldn't normally be dealt with. For example, the Predator Ooze. You could do it on Predator Ooze because it's such high damage, but then it'll be destroyed, so maybe you don't want to. You could do it on, let's say, Spiked Ballad because it has Trample. So it becomes an 8/8 Trample. And again, gives great tempo, very powerful tempo. You can do it if you want to just trigger your guy because you don't have another way of triggering their, you know, you can do it on the zombie because you want to trigger their finales. And of course, the #1 thing that everyone wants on Vraska to trigger is, where is it? Baby Mammoth. As we all know, Vraska basically lives and dies on these sort of Mama Mammoth cards that are 7/7 trample for 4 mana. So you can give your baby mammoth up to 6 damage and 6 health. And it makes the enemy, you know, ask themselves, do I really want to not block this guy? Because if I don't, he's going to die anyway. And that's sort of the power that Vraska can have. Also, You can now do it on Liliana. Liliana White Splash has another way now with this card to sort of kill your own creature. You don't have to use, Day of Judgment or like killing your own creatures. You can now just use this guy and give, your 1/1 guy, turn it into like a 5/5 smash face for 5 damage, and then come back as a 2/2. It's a nice way to trigger your own Relentless from Liliana. But really where I think this will be worked into, either Black Splash Chandra or Angrath. Why? Because of the red card. Let's go take a look. Reset. Red creature. Ball Lightning. With this Sadistic Mind Flare at 4 mana and Ball Lightning at 3 mana, you have 7 mana. You can turn this guy into what is essentially a 10/5 trample that will die at the end of the turn anyway. So it's 10 face damage. It forces it to get blocked. It's a very powerful way of sort of ending it and forcing the enemy to take damage. And again, having 4 damage on anyone with trample is also great for, well, let's take a look. Trample. It's great for, Overgrown Iguana, again, Nahiri, Chandra, Seismodon, although no one really uses Seismodon, but I mean, you could, right? And of course, Spawning Hellion, which you just want to get in the damage so you can spawn another version in your deck. Anyway, so that's Sadistic Mind Flare. The next one is Wolfgar, 3 mana, 3/5, green-red, legendary epic. So Wolfgar takes, or rather deals, 1 damage for every damage that he takes. Deal 1 damage to your opponent after he takes damage. So funnily enough, if he takes like 5 damage in 1 hit, he's just going to die and only do 1 damage. So the best use for him is if you can buff him up, with Domri. Let's take a look at how Domri would normally play himself. So let's look at Domri. So if Domri really wanted, he could buff himself up with, the Giant Growth. He could do Grudge Match so that it forces him to take damage and then attack again. So that's like maybe an extra 1 or 2 damage. But I think the really best use for Wolfgar is Domri against Ral. Why? Because Ral's Chaos Lightning. So let's take a look. Spell, blue-red. Chaos Lightning, which is going to be 5 cost. Chaos Lightning does the 1 damage. And if Wolfgar is the only creature you have on board, he's going to eat 5 damage 5 different times. And so he's going to die and absorb 5 damage, but he's going to deal 5 damage to Ral's very chiseled 9 o'clock shadow face. And so that's going to be, I think, the perfect way of using Wolfgar. Not that it's always going to happen, but it is a nice, interesting way to maximize his value against the enemy. So Wolfgar is there as sort of a Rush Domri card, green and red. And also could be played in Vivian, right? If you can buff him up and people are forced to block him, but then he still does damage, a nice way to chip at your enemy. And the last card we're going to reveal today is Icing Death. Another, I believe, legendary epic card. Icing Death, 8 mana, 5/6 flying white. Destroy all creatures with power greater than their health. With power greater than their health. So if their health is low, and then you cast this guy, it'll kill them. So funnily enough, it's all creatures. Not just your enemy's creatures, but yours as well. So that means that you need to have your creature with high HP so it doesn't get affected. Although, to be honest, if you're going to play Icing Death at 8 mana, you're pretty much asking him to save you from death. You're pretty much asking him to save the board. So even if he does kill your creatures, I don't think it really matters. I don't think that's the reason why you're playing him. But as a white and blue card, the majority of blue cards, as you guys know, the majority of white and blue cards, let's take a look, that are creatures, the majority of the time they have more health than attack. It's just the way that it is, right? Especially blue, Prodigal Student. As you guys know, Xander Split the Clever, Jace's Apprentice, right? Tons of health. And Stardust Moth. Toothy the Dream is maybe an exception, right? Teferi's Acolyte, though, Wielder of Waves. So all these cards, except for maybe Disney the Capuchin, all these cards normally that you normally play and see in blue decks normally have more HP than they do, more toughness than they have damage. And if they're even, like Mistraven, it doesn't seem to affect them. So who is this targeting? This is targeting all of your Kaya. Because all those black cards that Kaya has that are creatures, oops, let's go to it. Daggerclaw Imp, dead. Dark Confidant, dead. Oops, not Shadow Weaver. Counterfeiter, dead. Silent Prowler, dead, right? Merchant of Death, also dead. Vengeful Brute. So it sort of board wipes. Not Blood Queen Drana, but it sort of board wipes a lot of these. And if, Liliana Lurking Horror combo, Liliana Relentless guys, Liliana's Goliath, right? it does a lot of these destruction of high damage, low health black creatures, and also red creatures are just the same. Raging Goblin, Pouncing Lemur, Electromage, Fire Elemental, Goblin Vandal, though no one really plays it that much. Sword Cannoneer, he's the same, never mind. Overgrown Iguana does it, right? Of course, Okun the Crusher, by the time he, EVs on board for even a single turn, he will be affected by that. Enraged Elemental, if he survives enough damage. Of course, Zozu will be affected by that after one attack. Seismodon. So a lot of these red creatures, Hellrider, and even some of the green creatures with more attack, but a lot of the red creatures especially, they will die to this specific icing death. And I think that's just a big stall, probably good for, not Nahiri, but good for like Teferi, right, to stall his deck, to stall the game, and also for White Splash Jace. Although White Splash Jace might not use it because it's 8 mana so expensive, you already have 7 mana Day of Judgment, which is effectively the same thing. But I think it's a nice way to see how you can combo this off in White Stall. So anyways, that's all the review for today. Hope you guys liked what you heard and saw. We're going to now show you some artwork. Please continue to watch and let me know what you guys think. So we have here some of the D&D Icons set artwork that we kind of found out from some of the community members, a very interesting way, and I wanted to show you, I think, some of the artwork from the dragons. As you guys may or may not know, D&D has a set of, I guess there's dragon theme, at least for the Lost Realms, my understanding is. So we're going to have some of the dragons. So our first artwork is this sort of really beautiful, really cool red dragon. And then we also have the next one is like a black dragon. And like a green dragon. And I think a blue dragon, so you kind of see all of them. And yeah, so I think we already have sort of the other, we also have another dragon, which I think is the white dragon, which you guys saw earlier. So those are the 5 dragons, I believe. Don't know the names of them, and you guys can probably Google it and find out, if you Google it, it's kind of your own thing. And I also wanted to show you some of the really cool artwork from the wizard class cards. So the first one is called the Wizard's Familiar, and the Wizard's Familiar, I guess it's like this kind of really cool owl, but if you shrink it down to a card size, it might just be like the owl's face, hoot hoot. So the next one after the Wizard's Familiar is it's called the Signature Spell. That's like the level 2 thing, and I think it's just, I have no idea what the signature spell is. It could be, maybe it's like a Kothofed, draft something, or like an Isochron Scepter, draft something, but really a lot more powerful than just, a random Isochron thing. So we'll have to see. And then the next card after Signature Spell is the Elemental Mastery. Elemental Mastery, I guess it looks like the wizard is casting fire and water. It really reminds me of the red Elemental Blast and blue Elemental Blast cards, the most OP interrupt cards from like way back in the day, 1990s. And yeah, we'll have to see what that really means. But then I know there's also another card called Water Elemental that sort of comes off from the Elemental Master. As you guys can see, the Water Elemental is, well, it's made of water, but then there's also lightning and of course the fire from before. So we'll have to see what that means. So I wanted to introduce some of the good artwork for you guys. If you guys do like it, please do let us know. Leave a comment on the kind of content you'd like to see below. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.